In this presentation, we explore the fundamentals of Coriolis force. We shall consider only the simplest case in which we see the Coriolis force in action without using the full spherical geometry of Earth, and also without considering other force components like gravity, thermal gradients, etc., which might muddle our understanding about the Coriolis force. So we are just going to use the simplest case where we see the Coriolis force effect and explain the effect. We should probably rename it angular momentum plus Coriolis effect, because angular momentum conservation criteria plays the major role and Coriolis term creates only a relatively minor effect. The term Coriolis force is famous for doing something which it does not do. In that sense also, it is fictitious. So this object here in orangish color is our frame of reference, and point O inside it at the center is the origin of that frame. This frame may be rotating also in some cases with point O as the center of rotation. But first we consider the non-rotating case or an inertial frame case in this scenario. We will use non-rotating frame and inertial frame as synonymous terms in this presentation. This object here in greenish color is our test object under observation. We are tracking its motion. We use the circular coordinate system r theta in order to keep track of this object. R is the radial distance of the test object from the origin of our frame of reference, and theta is the angle at O made with respect to the positive x-axis. We consider the anti-clockwise rotation as positive. So we get the instantaneous position vector of the test object as this vector r0. It is equal to r cos theta I plus sin theta j, where I and j are the usual unit vectors along x and y axis. This is just standard notation. So simply differentiating this vector r0 with respect to time will give us the instantaneous velocity of the test object. And differentiating vector r0 with respect to time twice will give us the instantaneous acceleration. The acceleration term has two components, one radial component and one tangential component. So this is the general form of the acceleration in 2D. This is in the inertial frame. Let us now consider a rotating frame of reference. The frame is rotating with a uniform angular velocity big omega or uppercase omega. Then at any time instant t after we start the observations, the r theta coordinates that we saw in the inertial frame case gets altered as r theta minus omega t. That is, in time t, the frame itself would be rotated by an angle omega t, because it's a rotating frame. So if at initial time t equals 0, the xy axis of the frame was oriented along these dashed lines, at some other time instant t, the xy axis are oriented differently, as shown by these solid black lines. So the frame has rotated from this dashed line configuration to this rotated line, this solid black line configuration. So we have to negate this factor omega t from the original angle theta measured in the non-rotating frame. So theta was measured in the non-rotating frame with respect to these dashed lines, but since the frame itself is rotating, we have to negate this omega t factor, which is the amount of rotation that the frame has rotated by. So this theta with respect to the dashed lines is the angle with respect to the non-rotating frame, and theta minus omega t is what we observe from a rotating frame. Since the center of rotation is also the origin O of the frame, the radial distance r remains unaltered. Only theta becomes theta minus omega t. So we get the altered instantaneous position vector as this new vector r, Note this is R, not R naught. R naught was used in the inertial frame. In the rotating frame, the position vector is represented by this vector R. So vector R is R. This small r is the scalar distance. It is R into cos theta minus omega t I plus sin theta minus omega t j. So this is the new position vector where theta has become theta minus omega t. The acceleration term now has additional terms when compared to the inertial frame acceleration. This double derivative of r naught, that is d square r naught by dt square vector, is the acceleration we see in the inertial frame. These extra terms, that is the tangential term 2 dr by dt omega and the radial term r into omega square minus 2 omega d theta by dt, these are called the pseudo force terms or fictitious force terms. From these excess terms, we get the Coriolis force. These extra terms are not part of the actual dynamics of the object. They only appear if the moving object are observed from a rotating frame. They are not seen in the non-rotating frame. That is, these terms are not occurring in the inertial frame measurements. They only occur when we measure the moving object from a rotating frame. That is, we are situated in the center of the rotating frame or observing the object. Then only we find these extra terms. So these are called the pseudo force terms or fictitious force terms. Suppose vector d square x by dt square be the difference between the acceleration observed in the rotating frame, that is d square r by dt square, and the acceleration in the non-rotating frame, d square r naught by dt square. So d square x by dt square is difference d square r by dt square minus d square r naught by dt square. The right hand side terms can be rearranged, and when we do that, we get one radial component r omega square, which is the centripetal force. Note, it is an attractive force. And another term 2 dr naught by dt cross omega. So this term is known as the Coriolis force. Like we get the pseudo force terms in the force balance equation, we also get pseudo kinetic energy terms due to this non-zero omega. We shall not discuss about these energy terms here. These fictitious force or energy terms are indeed associated with veering away or deviation in the path of expected particle trajectories. That is, suppose we fire the particles in a radial direction, we expect the particle to go from the periphery of the rotating object to the center. But it steers away, it deviates from this path. It does not reach the center in the usual case. That is what, and it gets deviated either to the left or right depending on the direction of rotation. And so this is what needs to be explained, how this deviation happens. Suppose we consider simple straight line trajectories in radial direction, either moving towards the center as in the left panel or moving away from the center as shown in the right panel. Seen from an inertial frame, the motion appears as a straight line, this black straight line segment AB in both the panels, left and right. So the particles originate from point A and is thrown towards the origin or the center O in the left panel, or thrown away from the origin as shown in the right panel. If the outer circle is part of the rotating frame, then by the time the object reaches the point B, suppose this point B is in the inertial frame, it is fixed in the inertial frame, it's not moving with respect to the inertial frame, and also we assume this point A is also fixed in the inertial frame. It is at rest with respect to the inertial frame, these both A and B. So by the time the object reaches the fixed point B from A, the moving point C, the point C is part of the rotating frame and it is rotating around this circle. So by the time this object reaches point B from A, the moving point C on the outer circle in the rotating frame will also reach point B. That is, point B is the meeting point. The object also reaches here, and the point C also comes over here, because the C is rotating, it is moving. In time it comes over, it's in the direction of rotation, so it comes over to point B. Therefore, from the rotating frame, the straight line motion AB that was seen in the inertial frame appears as a curved path AC. So AB is what we see in the inertial frame. The point A was in the inertial frame, point B was in the inertial frame. The projectile was released in the direction AB in the inertial frame. So we see a straight line in the inertial frame with uniform constant velocity. But from the rotating frame, it appears as this curved path AC with these extra pseudo force terms included. So this AC is the cyan line shown in this. This is the path we expect with the pseudo force terms. This is what we see apparently in the rotating frame when we observe the same motion, that is this black line motion from the rotating frame. So this cyan line is seen in both the panels, this curving. The black line is the trajectory as seen from the inertial frame, and cyan line is the trajectory observed from the rotating frame. The two major points that can be noted from here are, so we basically note mainly from this left panel. The first point is this cyan trajectory passes right through the center of the rotating platform, just like the black trajectory. The black trajectory was directed towards the center, so it's passing through the center. And we see this cyan trajectory is also passing right through the center of the rotating frame, this O, point O. And the second point is, by the time the black trajectory reaches point B prime, here on this green circle, inner circle, the cyan trajectory reaches point C prime. But we can note that the C prime point is situated to the left side of B prime. And this is not like the cannonball trajectories. This cyan line actually does not represent the cannonball trajectories. So this cyan line does not explain the cannonball trajectories, because these objects originally moving along the black line AB do not belong to the rotating frame of reference. That is, they are objects external to the rotating frame. Like, for example, watching some celestial object like a comet or some other object in the sky, in the celestial space, from a rotating Earth. So those objects are not bound by the rotation of the Earth. They do not need to conserve angular momentum or anything due to Earth's rotation. So they are external. And we are seeing, if we are seeing these external objects from a rotating frame, this is how it appears. In contrast, the cannonballs belong to the rotating frame of reference itself. They are part of the rotating Earth. So therefore, before being fired, they were rotating along with the Earth due to Earth's rotation. So they were part of the Earth, they were rotating with the Earth, unlike external objects, unlike objects which are outside the Earth, which do not rotate with Earth's rotation. So they are not like, these cannonballs are not like the celestial objects which are dynamically independent of Earth's rotation. These cannonballs are bound by the angular momentum conservation condition because they are part of this rotating Earth. So basically, this angular momentum conservation translates to velocity composition. These two are equivalent things. We can look at it like angular momentum conservation, or we can look at it as this addition of two different velocities. That is, if we are firing in the north-south direction, then apart from the north-south component of the fired projectile that comes from the cannon, we also need to add the tangential velocity due to rotation. That is, this east-west component is imparted by the Earth due to its rotation, and it is not by the cannon. So this north-south component is due to the cannon, it is fired by the cannon, and the east-west component is from the Earth's velocity, and we need to add both to get the resultant velocity of the cannon. So we need to take into account both the radial component and the tangential component to get the resultant formed by this vector addition. But if the cannon was kept outside the rotating Earth in an inertial or a stationary non-rotating frame, then it will not experience this east-west component. It will just have the radial component that was given by the cannon. And also it will not conserve angular momentum, since it's not part of this rotating frame. But the cannonballs fired from Earth have to conserve its angular momentum, and they also have to add this extra velocity term due to rotation of the Earth. So let us now consider the angular momentum conservation. In this expression, we have dropped the mass term, or we can simply consider that we are working with unit mass criteria. So we simply define the angular momentum variable A as r square d theta by dt without mass m. So A equals r square d theta by dt. It is a constant. This angular momentum conservation we are considering in the inertial frame. That is, r and theta are calculated in the inertial frame. That is, we are watching a rotating platform from an inertial frame. And there are cannonballs being fired from within the rotating frame. So we are watching the cannonballs being fired from within the rotating frame, from an outside frame, from an inertial frame. We are watching it from an inertial frame, but the activities are happening in the rotating frame. Since the cannonballs are situated at a certain radial distance before being fired, they have an inherent tangential velocity r d theta by dt. So it's a radius r from the center of the rotating platform. So they will have a tangential velocity or circular velocity of r d theta by dt. And also they will have an inherent angular momentum of r square d theta by dt, which is conserved. From this angular momentum A equation, taking the time derivative, we get this RHS terms is equal to 0. This term is related to the tangential acceleration term that we observe in the inertial frame. So if we consider the d square r naught by dt square that we observed in the acceleration term we observed in the inertial frame, there will be a tangential acceleration term which is related to this time derivative of angular momentum dA by dt. So this term in the acceleration factor becomes 0 due to angular momentum conservation. So angular momentum conservation implies this tangential term becomes 0. Further, from the energy conservation condition, we also get that this other term, the radial component of d square r naught by dt square, is also 0. That is, if energy is conserved, we get dr by dt square plus a square by r square as a constant. And differentiating this with respect to r, we get d square r by dt square minus r d theta by dt square equals 0. Therefore, overall we get net acceleration d square r naught by dt square vector is 0. So this motion, it is a force-free motion. It is a uniform straight line motion with constant velocity. And basically this is the outcome of assuming angular momentum and kinetic energy conservation in the absence of any external force field. So the two things that we assume here is that the kinetic energy, which is the only form because there are no external force fields, no potential energy terms, the kinetic energy is conserved and the angular momentum is conserved if we in this circular r theta frame. So in that condition, what we get is a straight line, force-free straight line motion with uniform velocity. And this acceleration is the apparent acceleration we see from the rotating frame. As expected, it only has the pseudo terms because the original acceleration is 0. It's a force-free term, so we only find these pseudo terms when we track the straight line motion. This is the same force equation we get for a purely radial motion also. So whether the motion is radially oriented, as long as it's uniform straight line motion, we get the same pseudo force energy pseudo force terms in this force balance equation. So this is the same force equation we get for a purely radial motion also, without doing any tangential velocity addition. But the vector r naught and the scalar small r will have different values with velocity addition and without velocity addition. So that is basically this force equation remains the same. But the particular values going inside the equation, those changes. These r naught and small r, they change values whether we conserve angular momentum or not, or whether we add the velocity components or not. So depending on the angular momentum or the velocity addition conditions, these the value of the equations changed, but the force equation remains the same, and these are the pseudo terms that we get. From the energy equation, we can work out the variation of the radial distance r with respect to time. Basically, we get dr by dt is this expression, and this can be easily integrated to get the solution for r. That is we get r as a function of time t. Actually, in all these places, E naught must be replaced by 2 E naught. Sorry about that, but since it is a constant, it does not change the solution format in any way. So we can do with that. We can carry on. Using the solution for r in the angular momentum equation, that is whatever the solution we got for r of t, we plug it into the angular momentum equation, and using that we get the variation of theta with respect to time. So we get the d theta by dt equation as this, and it also can be easily integrated, and we get the theta as a function of time. And negating the omega t factor from theta, we get theta prime. So theta prime is the solution for angular variation in the rotating frame. Theta defines the trajectory seen from the inertial frame, and theta prime shows the trajectory seen from the rotating frame. Thus, we can easily get the observed variation in both the inertial frame, that is r theta, and rotating frame, r theta minus omega t. So we get both these values. Let us now plot the solutions, these equations r theta and theta prime, and see how they look. As we noted earlier, the straight black lines in both these panels, the left and right, are the trajectories of an object released from an inertial frame and also being observed from an inertial frame. So it was released from an inertial frame and are being observed in an inertial frame, from an inertial frame. So we discussed these black and cyan lines already. We shall focus more on these blue and red lines here. We know the black lines originate outside the rotating frame and are being observed from an inertial frame. The blue lines in both the panels, left and right, are also being observed from an inertial frame, but they originate within the rotating frame itself. That is, these are like cannonballs being fired from within the rotating frame, not from outside. So these are very much part of the rotating frame. These objects, these are like cannonballs being fired from within the rotating frame, but only these are being observed from an inertial frame. They are not being observed within the rotating frame. Even though they are being fired from the rotating frame, they are in these blue line shows that they are being observed from an inertial frame, which is at rest, which is not rotating. Hence, these objects, whatever which were fired from the rotating frame, have to conserve their angular momentum. And also the resultant motion is due to the velocity additions of both the radial component due to cannon firing and the tangential component due to the rotating frame. As a result, the projectiles fired in the radial direction deviate and move along the blue line instead of going along the black lines. This is not a pseudo effect. This is an effect seen even in the inertial frame. So this effect, this shift from the black to blue line is not a pseudo effect, because it is also seen in the inertial frame. It is not just seen because we are watching some object move in from a rotating frame. But even when we see from the inertial frame, this angular momentum condition implies that whatever that was released in the radial direction within the rotating frame in this along this black line will actually move in the blue line direction as seen from a inertial frame. So the trajectory actually steers away from the radial path due to this addition of tangential velocity component, and it certainly never reaches the center due to this extra velocity component. So it never reaches the center, it steers away from the center even if it was directed towards the center. So when we try to observe this blue trajectory from the rotating frame, then we see the red trajectory. The red trajectories are like the trajectory of cannonballs being fired from within the rotating frame and also being observed by the rotating frame. So the blue was being fired from within the rotating frame but being observed from an external inertial frame, while the red are also being fired from within the rotating frame like blue, but they are being observed from within the rotating frame itself, not an external inertial frame like the blue trajectories. So the red trajectories are exactly like the trajectory of cannonballs being fired from within the rotating frame and also being observed from the same rotating frame. So this is the final deviated path we get. So the major factor responsible for deviation in the path of the cannonballs is the angular momentum conservation condition, that is A equals r square d theta by dt. This is what causes the main shift from the radially oriented black line to the blue line. This is the major shift. If you are saying it is veering rightwards, this is how we get when we shift from this black line to blue line due to angular momentum conservation. If we account for pseudo forces alone, then the black line will appear as the cyan line. So if we were considering only those pseudo forces, this black line will appear as this cyan line, which is the wrong path. This is not observed. It does not represent the path of the cannonballs, because these paths are like the external objects, and cannonballs are being fired from within the rotating frame. So these are the pseudo terms, and we get the correct result, that is the red curve, when we apply these pseudo forces terms on the blue line itself. So this black line is the main one, which is released from the inertial frame and also observed from the inertial frame. And if we observe this black line from the rotating frame, we get this cyan line. But if we seeing from within the inertial frame, outside this rotating frame, if we see that some particle was released in this radial direction along the black line from within the rotating frame, it gets added with this tangential velocity, and we see that from the inertial frame that this particle does not go along the black line, it goes along the blue line. So blue line is when we include the angular momentum conservation, and this we see even in the inertial frame. This is not a pseudo effect. This black to blue shift is not a pseudo effect. This is a real effect. And we get the correct path that we observe, that the from within that the trajectory we observe from within the rotating frame, that is the object was fired from within the rotating frame and also being observed from within the rotating frame. That trajectory is shown by this red line, and we get this red line by applying these pseudo force terms on this blue line. So if the cannonball is fired from within the rotating frame in the A B prime direction, then it will move along this red curve A C double prime. This red line represents the path of the actual cannonballs being fired from within the rotating frame and also being observed from within the same frame. So this is the correct concept which explains the path deviation of these cannonball trajectories, or any path deviation that we observe due to this rotation effect is explained by this concept. And as such, we see that it may be wrong to call this purely Coriolis effect. Probably rightfully it should be called angular momentum plus Coriolis effect, this red line, because it has both the contribution, both from angular momentum conservation and Coriolis effect. And also we note that the major deviation comes from this shift from the black line to the blue line. So the angular momentum conservation is really playing the major role. And this is not a pseudo effect. The shift from this black to blue line is not a pseudo effect. This is a real effect. So that's about it. So that's why we should call it the angular momentum plus Coriolis effect when we finally observe in the rotating frame, this red curve. So we end this presentation here. Thank you. If you want to understand the concepts of physics in the clearest way, regardless of concerns about scoring high marks in exams, please visit neophysics.com. Thank you.